understands and acts. And you know what? The Liberal Democrats can be, will be, that government. We are the party with the ideas that can get Britain out of this mess, because we understand there are no mistakes made by government that cannot be set right by the British people, if only they are given the chance. Ask yourself this. When you meet someone you don't know anything about, what do you expect? I'll tell you what I expect. My basic view of human nature is that people are born with goodness in them. Of course, people can be selfish, cruel, violent, but I believe no one starts that way. Most people, most of the time, will do the right things, not just for themselves, but for their family, their neighbours, their community. They need to be trusted to make those choices. And there is a terrible pessimism in the way Gordon Brown thinks we should all be organised from above, our every move controlled by the great puppet master in the sky. And there's pessimism too from David Cameron when he says that if you're overweight, vulnerable or poor, you're on your own. It's condescending, talking down to us, talking us down. And you know what neither of them understand? Is that if you always see the worst in people, you will never fix anything. There are huge challenges: protecting the planet, an ageing population, keeping our economy competitive as globalization shifts the power centers of the world. Everything we know from the last 50 years will change in the next 5. And these are challenges that could overwhelm us if we do not harness our potential. And it's liberalism, optimistic liberalism, that will find the best in Britain. So we have to get Britain's economy up and running again. Without jobs, there's no fairness, no opportunity. So let me set out right now our fairer future economic recovery plan. 4 steps to a better economic future. 1, action to stop unjust repossessions before tens of thousands of families find themselves on the streets, guided by the one man who had the foresight to see these problems coming, with more wisdom and experience than Labour and the Conservatives combined, Vince Cable. 2, the freewheeling, bonus-driven short-termism of the city must come to an end. We must stop the amoral culture that sees speculators betting on banks to fail, knowing the taxpayer will pay it out in the end. And the madness of bonuses awarded no matter what. We need a wholly new approach to regulation, limiting, not encouraging, the excesses of the market. And when reckless bankers come with gold-plated begging bowls to ask for shareholders to be bailed out, our answer will be a resounding no. Three, we will put in place the building blocks for future economic stability. Interest rates that take house price changes into account, and independent monitoring of our fiscal rules. And finally, but most importantly, tax cuts for families who are struggling, to help them make ends meet and keep the wheels of the economy turning. The money must go direct to people on low and middle incomes. The very wealthy, the super rich, should be paying more, not less. I will never support the Tory idea that you cut taxes for millionaires and the benefits somehow trickle down. That's not what struggling families need. They need their money back. I was talking to a pensioner recently. She was called Joan. I could see the anxiety on her face. She was one of the million people, who lost out from the 10p tax rate even after the so-called compensation package, struggling to pay every bill that comes through the door, worrying about getting through the winter. Now, if you were Joan, what would you want? Your money spent on a management consultant's advice on a government IT project that will never work, or your money handed back to you? Now, Liberal Democrats have called for tax rises in the past, when what Britain needed most of all was more investment in our public services. We were right to do so. But what hard-up families need most of all today is food on the table, petrol in the car, and warmth in their homes. And here's how we'll find the money to help them. We'll ensure everyone makes a fair contribution, polluters, fat cats, and non-dons included. Our idea is simple. Everyone pays their fair share. Under Gordon Brown, tax has become voluntary for the super rich and for giant multinational companies. And David Cameron will make it even easier for those at the top. When Northern Rock collapsed, the chief executive got what they called a golden goodbye. £30,000 tax-free as a thank you for failure. Who can explain that to Joan? Why is she paying more when the man who brought down Northern Rock is getting tax-free handouts? It's wrong, and it's got to stop. Now, raising taxes at the top will go a long way to cutting them at the bottom. But we need to do more. And this week, we pledge together to deepen our fair tax cuts, to make them fairer still. And that means doing most for those who have the least. It means making sure the richest pay more, and so aiming to make 9 out of 10 taxpayers better off. I want this to be the most progressive, most redistributive tax plan ever put forward by a British political party. Using just a little of the money the government wastes every day to help people in their everyday lives. That doesn't mean cutting help for the poorest, of course. It doesn't mean stopping vital investment in hospitals and schools. It just means taking a cold, hard look at all government spending and asking a basic question. Is it working? Every family in Britain is tightening their belts for the hard times ahead. It is time for government to tighten its belt too. Labour has doubled government spending from £300 billion a year to £600 billion a year. That's £18,000 a second. They've taken, give or take a few, £16 million of your money since I started speaking. It'll be 38 million by the time I've finished. And if you clap for too long, it'll cost us billions. Does anyone in this room believe every single pound is spent well? I don't. And I think it's liberal to be sceptical. Sceptical that central, controlling government gets things right. It's the Labour Party that believes every pound spent by government is better than a pound spent by you or me. We don't.